Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Hello.
The city looks good from here.
From this distance, it looks fine. That's right. I don't see any problems.
There's fewer cars.
Hardly any cars either. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Definitely a pandemic picture, right?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Hello to everyone who's joined us. Welcome. People are still joining on, so we'll get started in a couple of minutes. As we have a good critical mass here. If I could ask, who's on 447-808?
I think that might be me, Helen. I think I've joined on my phone. I expected it to let me do a video call on my phone, but it seems to only be audio.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be much use to you if we're looking at things because I can't.
No, I recognize the call letters there. 4-4.
Yeah, that's Helen.
That's
I was
right.
thinking that might be you. We'll get you information after the meeting.
Okay.
How are we doing, Sarah?
So far, so good. We're still waiting for a few of our focus group participants. I think we still need Heather. Oh, Heather's here. I apologize. There you are.
No worries. I'm going to run and get a water quick.
Henny has disappeared.
I believe we're still waiting on a GSA representative. And
Mina joined.
Mina's here. Excellent.
Yep, I'm here. Christy, we just dropped out of another meeting. Christy should be on soon.
Thank you.
And I saw Mr. Odell on.
Yes.
I'm not seeing I can't see all the names in our participant list.
Happy to be on. Thanks. This is Greg Odell.
Hey, Greg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Greg.
Mr. Allen's with us.
Good morning.
I think we have about everybody here, Beth.
Okay, so we will get started. Marcel, would you like to
Certainly. Yes. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Committee, our expert panel, and a guest. I'm Marcel Acosta, the Executive Director of the National Capital Planning Commission. We're really excited for this opportunity to talk about Pennsylvania Avenue's future, how outstanding civic stage for the city and the nation, and also contribute to the downtown sustained economic health, particularly in the wake of the pandemic and recent social unrest. And last time the Executive Committee and our panel convened was in December 2018 at our focus group charrette. And inspired by the expert panel's recommendations, the Executive Committee and working group have been working on 3 conceptual visions for the Avenue and have begun to engage in stakeholders, several who have joined us today. And what a difference 2 years have made with the pandemic, major social and cultural shifts, presidential election, the recent disturbances at the U.S. Capitol. Our circumstances today are very different than the last time that we met. These events have also reinforced the importance and value of our public spaces, including Pennsylvania Avenue. So today we're going to share 3 concepts that illustrate a range of potential changes for the Avenue. And this is a big step towards a new vision for Pennsylvania Avenue. So I do appreciate your time today and look forward to our follow-up discussion on June 22nd, where we'll discuss your reactions and any refinements needed to improve these ideas and concepts. So now I'll hand it over to Beth and she'll get us started. Beth.
Great. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Let's see, I just lost my screen. I'm sorry. Oh, the beauties of virtual. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, which I think most do, I'm Elizabeth Miller. I'm the Director of Physical Planning here at the National Capital Planning Commission. Our project team has been looking forward to sharing the Pennsylvania Avenue Vision concepts today. And we're also looking forward to reconvening with you on June 22nd to receive and discuss your thoughts and your comments on on the proposals that we're going to talk about this morning. We are recording today's presentation, but for only internal purposes. Joining us today, we have our executive committee, our expert panel, and invited guest. We also have the working group, which is the executive committee's technical staff, and many of them are listening in. We did brief the working group in late March on the draft concepts, and we hope that they find that their comments have been addressed in the materials that we're going to review today. Before we start, let's take a few minutes for introductions so everyone can put a face to a name. And I think this is perhaps the most logistically awkward aspect of online meetings. So I'm going to kind of facilitate here and call on individual groups to turn on your cameras at the same time. So when I call on you by first name alphabetically, please introduce yourself by full name and affiliation. So if I could ask now for everyone to turn their cameras off, we'll then have the different groups join in. So I'd like to first ask the executive committee to please turn on your cameras, and I'll begin to introduce you. Okay, and I'm not seeing any faces, so the executive committee could come online. I see Mina. Okay.
Because I am a good follower of directions.
You are, thank you. So this may or may not work. If it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. Is Anna Chamberlain with us yet? She's with DDOT? Okay.
Not yet. She is planning to join. I'll go check on her.
Okay. Andrew.
Hi, hey, this is Chris Shaheen from the Office of Planning. Andrew got called into another meeting. He is going to try and check in throughout this meeting.
Great. Okay, thank you. David Maloney.
David Maloney, State Historic Preservation Officer in the Office of Planning. Sorry, no camera today.
Okay, great. Is Jill with us today? Okay, is Sean Keneally? Actually, Eliza Voigt just joined. Mina?
Yes.
Peter?
Peter May, National Park Service.
And Tom? Has Tom been able to join yet?
Yeah, Tom Lukey, Commission of Fine Arts. Good to see you.
Okay, great. All right, so we're expecting Anna to come in a little bit. And then we've got we've got NAMA represented by some of their staff, which we'll get to in a second. I'd like now to ask the executive committee to turn your cameras off and the expert panel to turn on your cameras, or at least for those of you that can. Anita?
Hi, I'm Anita Morrison from Partners for Economic Solutions.
Haney? Haney, I know you're there.
Muted.
I think you're muted.
Haney Hassan with Barbara DeBell. Hi, everybody.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Okay. Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Arnold, formerly of StreetSense and now from Viametrics.
And we also have Helen, who doesn't have a camera today, but you'll recognize her voice.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm calling you from a beautiful sunlit London.
Jeffrey.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Tumlin with the San Francisco MTA.
And Lori.
Hi. Hi, I'm Lori Olin. Am I muted or not? No.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. I'm a landscape architect, right?
Great.
Nice to see you all.
Good to see you all. Thank you very much. So now if I could ask you to turn off your cameras, I'm going to ask the guests that have joined us today to turn on theirs. I believe I saw Mr. Odell.
Hey, this is Greg Odell with Event CC. Thanks for having me, and hope everyone is well.
Jen He. Is she there?
Hi, I'm Jin Hee Kim. I'm the Chief Creative Officer here at Events DC.
Great. Hi there. And I know Jonathan Rogers with the Deputy Mayor's Office is going to join. I'm not sure he's on yet. If you are, please come on. Nancy Skinkle with the Architect of the Capitol is going to be joining us. And Neil.
Hi, everyone. Neil Albert with the Downtown Penn.
Great. Hi, Neil. It's been a long time.
I know, too long.
Yes. And Sean Townsend with the Director of Nightlife and Culture may be joining us. Not sure if he's here yet or not. Okay, so if I could ask the guests, please to turn off your cameras, and also just want to welcome you. Thank you for your time. And we're really excited that you were able to join us today. So now I'd like to ask the project team to turn on your cameras and introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Sarah Ridgely with the National Capital Planning Commission.
Hi, Garrett Wolf, Urban Planner with the Physical Planning Division.
Karen Sherhold, Urban Planner with the Physical Planning Division.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Free. I'm an urban planner with the Urban Design and Plan Review Division.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm Otto Conan with ZGF Architects, and my colleagues that I've been collaborating with NCPC include Amy Triscoli, Bob Wood, and Mo Lee. Okay, thank you.
They've been an absolute pleasure to work with. So thank you all for joining us. All right, again, thanks to everyone. I know that's always a bit awkward. It would be really nice if we were together, but we'll go ahead and kick it off here. So that the three vision concepts that we're going to be looking at today articulate very different futures for the Avenue. Each has a very distinct character and a different approach to circulation, public space, and connections to nearby destinations. These concepts grew out of a charrette with the executive committee, as Marcel mentioned, that we held back in December of 2018. The executive committee has asked us to build upon the panel's work, to think boldly, and to articulate very distinct transformative concepts. Today's briefing is an orientation to these ideas. We'll review a series of graphics, and these are not intended to represent specific designs, but only to convey an impression and a general role and character for each of the three concepts. So we want you to leave with a sense of place, of what this place could be. We look forward to your feedback today and future steps, which will include a rigorous analysis of each lens. So we will be doing that down the road. But today we want to think big and think broad and without much limitation. The ultimate solution, though, will likely include the best ideas from or some combination of each of these lenses. So there will be a point in time when we will focus in on that feasibility. Some of you have been heavily involved in this work from the very start. Others are new to the discussion. So we're going to ask patience from both sides. Our briefing today strives to balance the need to provide the right amount of information needed by those familiar with the work, while also bringing those new to the discussion up to speed. As I mentioned, we really regret that we're not able to yet meet in person. And since our study area spans more than a mile, we've actually done our very best to organize a lot of information and materials to simulate an engaging pinup presentation. Sarah's actually showing the presentation wall or the pinup wall. And of course, if we were meeting in person, you could actually walk around, view this pinup wall at your, look at materials at your discretion. But instead, we're using what we call this Miro board to substitute for our pinup space. And because we're virtual, in order to avoid screen fatigue, we're not going to cover all of this information you see here. We're only going to focus on the key graphics that highlight the role and character of each of the lenses, and then summarize their physical differences among them. If you're interested in more detail, the Miro board includes additional information that you can reference at your leisure. We will be sending you a link to this after the meeting. And if you allow to focus, so that when you have the board, you can actually focus in on more detail. You can enlarge the images. You can actually see some of the legends more clearly. But we're just working with some of the limitations of a virtual environment today. So if I could ask Sarah to point to the additional information and additional graphics and diagrams that illustrate the lenses. This is information we're not going to cover today, but it is here for your reference. If she could also highlight the areas where we have background information, we have a resource section. that includes a high-level summary of key findings and the analysis of several studies that we've undertaken. Again, that's here for your future look if you choose. As I mentioned, we're going to send you a link to the Miro board after this meeting, and you can look at it at your leisure before we reconvene on June 22nd. So today's agenda includes 3 parts. First, we have a refresher for those of you familiar with this work, but we've also designed it to provide those of you new to the discussion with a high-level orientation to the materials that we're going to brief you on. We'll summarize the status of our work and introduce the 3 lenses and how these lenses build upon the expert panel's recommendations and where we left off at our last executive committee meeting in late August. Next, Stephanie, Karen, and Garrett will take you on a stroll down the avenue, each giving a short 5-minute overview of the 3 lenses, focusing on their key character-defining features. So it's about the sense of place. Karen will then take about 10 minutes to orient you to the 5 urban rooms that we've defined and give a high-level comparison of the lenses, primarily focusing on their physical differences. So between each of these sessions, we have allowed time for you to ask questions if you need clarification or if you need us to explain additional information. And this is all to help tee us up for our June 22nd discussion. I will note that item 4 here on the agenda includes the additional lens information that Sarah pointed to earlier. Again, this is here for reference. We're not going to cover it today. So for next steps, we've actually developed some questions that may spur your thoughts and help facilitate a discussion among the expert panel, the executive committee, and our guest at the end of the month. So as always, we have a few meeting logistics to go over before we start. If you have any technical difficulty, please contact Solomon at the number on the bottom of the agenda. We've also included his contact information in the chat for easy reference. And those that may not be familiar with Teams, there's a little chat that's like a little thought bubble at the top of your screen. While some of you may be viewing today's presentation on a large monitor, I assume most are viewing via a laptop and maybe even a few by phone. So to max, oh, if somebody can mute their, Sarah, can you mute your, there we go. Well, some of you may be viewing today's presentation on a large monitor, most are viewing on a laptop. I said that already. To maximize the size of the image on your screen, you can actually click on the 3 little dots at the top of the menu bar. That will drop down a menu, and where you see full screen, if you click on that, it'll make the images a little bit bigger. So to ensure the graphics are legible as possible, Sarah will be panning around the Miro board a little bit to point us to relevant information. And she will do her best to minimize the movement on the screen, which we know can be distracting. As always, we ask you to please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. And during the question period, please just go ahead, turn on your camera if you have a question or you want us to clarify or expand on the material that we've presented. Okay, so now for just a brief intro to and background information. So for the benefit of those who are new to the discussion, each of the lenses seeks to improve the vitality and the economic health of the avenue by building on its strengths and attributes, while also addressing the challenges and leveraging opportunities that we've identified through these 4 studies. We've done an urban design and transportation study, we did a market analysis, and an assessment of the cultural landscape. Each of these studies includes a comprehensive analysis with key findings, which is the basis for the concepts of the work we're going to share today. The key findings from each of these studies is summarized in the background information that Sarah pointed to earlier. And of course, they were instrumental in informing the executive committee's overarching goals and strategic plan, which is summarized here. In 2018, the executive committee released a strategic plan that includes short, mid, and long-term actions shown here in red. We are nearing completion of our short-term objectives, which is to test physical changes through the 3 lenses or vision concepts. We've also been working with the DC BID and Events DC to facilitate programming activities in an effort to begin changing the perception of the avenue and its role in the city in the near term. While working on these short-term strategies, we've also been teeing up the next steps, which are shown here in green, which essentially includes the infamous NEPA and 106 consultation process. It's during this phase that we will analyze the pros and cons and costs and benefits of the three lenses to eventually identify a preferred alternative. In the interim, I'm pleased to report that GSA has secured funding for a survey for both above ground and below ground for the entire corridor, and has asked NCPC to form a partnership to lead this effort, starting in late 2021, early 22. So I'll soon be in touch with some of the jurisdictional agencies in the near future to begin to discuss this process. I'm now going to turn this over to Sarah, who's going to give you a quick refresher of the project's goals, an introduction to the three lenses, and the framework for transforming the avenue. Sarah?
So in the interest of time, I'll briefly walk through some background materials from earlier meetings we've had to help frame the lenses. And I'll pause at the end before we dive into the lenses so we can answer any clarification questions. Beth just mentioned that strategic plan. Not only does it include the steps forward on the avenue, but it also includes 4 goals here that are guiding the vision concept development work. The first one is to build upon the avenue's symbolic role as a stage for inclusive, nationally significant events. This creates opportunities for everybody to participate in the capital city civic life, and it also generates economic activity for the city. Next up, we have the desire to elevate the avenue's civic quality and the pedestrian experience. This can be done through creating beautiful, active, and accessible public spaces and ground floor uses that draw people to and along the avenue. Next up is to make the avenue more walkable, to improve pedestrian connections to surrounding areas and make more efficient use of the roadway and sidewalks for current and future mobility needs. And finally, there's a desire to create an inviting and beautiful setting for daily activities. This would elevate the avenue's identity as a great civic destination, but also a pleasant place to hang out too. So we shared these last time. Here are the 3 lenses, and we'll extrapolate on these a little bit more later, but just a quick recap. Each one includes elements to enhance the physical space, engage visitors, support events, and achieve sustainability goals, each doing so in a slightly different way. Urban Capital celebrates local Washington. It creates a third place and social hub that links all 8 wards through strong mobility and daily programming connections. And it features a highly adaptable public space network activated by flexible commerce. Civic Stage imagines the avenue as an inspirational destination with a constantly rotating program of things to see and do, all within a beautiful setting that has the comfort amenities and special event infrastructure needed to support nationally significant events. And then Green Street transforms the avenue into an urban linear park. It celebrates environmental health and wellness for all Americans and showcases the ecological history of the avenue and sustainability best practices. Now, you may recall we had a series of images and diagrams at our last couple of meetings to help explain the character and functionality of each of these lenses. This is just a summary slide of that work. It shows the range of public spaces, streetscapes, daily activity, and special events for each lens. Again, trying to differentiate and make each lens distinct. We also had a public space program. You may recall this earlier diagram that shows a mix of public spaces for each lens. We have primarily hardscape plazas in blue and more green or park spaces in the green to help reinforce its distinct role and character. We also share different roadway alignments for each lens. My colleagues will talk about these in more detail later, but big picture, each lens considers moves at the west end near Freedom Plaza, mid-avenue around Market Square, and then at the east end near Constitution Avenue. So let me zoom into Urban Capital Street and briefly walk through this one. Urban Capital Street restores the historic avenue alignment through Freedom Plaza. This creates 2 plaza spaces, each connected to their respective blocks north and south. Now heading east, this lens shows a build 2-line adjustment in the dashed black line here between 13th and 9th Streets. That brings the buildings on the north side closer to the avenue if they redevelop. And then further east here at Constitution, the alignment is generally the same as you see today. For Civic Stage on the west end, it reroutes traffic north of Pershing Park and Freedom Plaza. So that connects the plaza spaces to the Wilson Building and the White House Visitor Center with a shared street condition in front of those buildings. Market Square is more or less the same as it is today. And then at the east end, this lens explores the idea of tunneling Constitution Avenue to expand plaza space and prioritize the Pennsylvania Avenue experience. And then last up, we have Green Street. On the west end here, we have traffic rerouted south of Pershing and Freedom Plaza, so those park spaces are now connected north to the adjacent blocks. At Market Square, there's a permanent closure between 7th and 9th Streets, shown in red, to create a large, beautiful park space that also allows for emergency and motorcade egress. And then further east, we have a slight reconfiguration at Constitution to straighten out the jog at 4th Street. Speaking of which, 4th is closed between the galleries east and west, save for emergency vehicle and motorcade access. Now, as the team has defined or refined the road alignments, we've regularly consulted with the DDOT transportation study findings that support exploring a range of configuration options. The resources section below has a number of other pieces of that study, but I do want to highlight that we have an additional 20 feet of roadway that the study confirmed can be used for other purposes. Here's a snapshot of the morning and afternoon rush levels of service. And you can see this is obviously not your typical downtown street. We have plenty of excess capacity to work with here. And the study used that to define a kit of parts for different road configuration options with that additional 20 feet, many of which you'll see in the following slides. So let's take a look, while we're talking about the streetscape, let's take a look at these sections here very briefly. We have a number of high-level sections up here, one for each lens, generally showing the configuration of the roadway and sidewalks. I won't spend a lot of time here, but the lenses do explore a range of cartway or roadway options ranging from 80 feet, you can see here with Urban Capitol and Green Street, up to as much as 124 feet for the Civic Stage. So again, we're looking at a range of different options here. One other thing to note, that the Green Street is looking at a curbless condition. So here are the sections in a little bit more detail.
You just increase the size a bit.
Yes, I'm going to zoom in on these in 1 second. Now there's a lot going on here, and again, my colleagues will provide more lens details in a few minutes. But for just a quick functional comparison, I'll talk about the roadway briefly, and then I'll move out to the sidewalks. And as a disclaimer, these are very big picture, typical sections to show general configurations. Again, Beth mentioned earlier, we're looking more at the sense of place here today. But as we move beyond this conceptual work, the block by block details will require modifications. Great. We have 8 lanes of traffic shown in the gray, a center bike lane here in light blue, and then generous sidewalks on the north and south side that show the pedestrian zones in yellow, the street furnishing areas in orange, and the building yards in blue. And of course, we also have federal perimeter security noted as a line here in red. Here's Urban Capitol. This roadway has a dedicated transit lane on the north, travel lanes, and then a protected cycle track on the south side. Now the sidewalks here have street furnishings closer to the curb and pedestrian spaces closer to the building wall. And then we have the frontage zone on the north side that supports cafe style dining and other extensions of ground floor uses for those commercial buildings. On the south side, we have the building yards. And then of course, the perimeter security elements are brought closer to the curb. Here's Civic Stage. The key road feature here is a large and generous center promenade that attracts people to enjoy this beautiful view to the Capitol. It's flanked by the bike lanes. And just a quick note that anything within the roadway zone here, we recognize needs to be removable to accommodate the inauguration of other large events. The sidewalks here prioritize pedestrian space closer to the curb, and then the street furnishings closer to the buildings to allow for flexibility during events, mainly for crowd overflow. And then the south side security line is shown here at the edge of the building yard. Now, based on earlier discussions at the executive committee and working group meetings, there was a lot of discussion on how to adjust the Civic Stage so that it provides some more comfort amenities in the center of the street. So based on that, we looked at a new alternative here. Big picture, this creates that center promenade that's completely dedicated to people while also providing more permanent shade and enhancing pedestrian safety. So this in turn shifts the cars out towards the buildings a little bit further, similar to Unter den Linden in Berlin, and then shrinks some of the sidewalk space here to encourage more people to use that center promenade. Last but not least, we have Green Street. The roadway here is transit only, and split bike lanes are also in the roadway, as well as these darker green transition zones. Now, these could be filled with stormwater management elements or other plantings to reinforce that idea of a green street. And like Civic Stage, we recognize anything in the roadway would have to be removable and support heavy loads. The curbless sidewalks here include street furnishing zones that define the edge a little, and then generous pedestrian zones underneath the tree canopy. Here we're showing the perimeter security line closer to the edge of the sidewalk, potentially integrated with the street furniture zone. So those are the street sections briefly. And again, my colleagues are going to just talk about the character and feel of these places in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. One other piece to recap is the framework of the avenue. Of course, the goal here is to look at the avenue between the White House and Capitol as a cohesive 1.2 mile experience, right? But we also need to recognize that this is part of a larger area beyond the avenue and really touches all 8 wards. We're so lucky that we have a great location here right downtown. It sits at the heart of the city, very strong transit, civic, and green connections to capitalize on. And we want to consider all this as we consider how to weave this area back into the city fabric. Given that, we also need to think smaller. This is 1.2 miles of a street. So this, we're not just talking about a block here. And creating a static design that does not respond to the surrounding context does no favors. So you may remember from our urban design analysis, we looked at 5 different urban rooms that identified unique forms and functions for each of these spaces. And so we've continued to lean on these, and you'll see each lens framework explores ways to strengthen the character of each of these rooms, as well as the transitions between them. Just a quick reminder, we know that there are limited development spaces along the avenue. And so this diagram just briefly highlights those limited areas. As I mentioned earlier, Urban Capital explores an adjusted build-to line on the avenue's north side noted here. We have the FBI site also listed, as well as a potential square 575 down here towards the Capitol. Again, these are all potential opportunities. They could provide space to make better connections north and south, and also on the east end with the Capitol complex, to have the avenue develop over there. Now we also considered view sheds. Of course, the views are spectacular here, not just to the Capitol, but to other important civic amenities around the monumental core. We're very familiar with the eye level views of these, but this framework also considers rooftop views that we referred to here as perches, as a nod to the focus group's work. So wanted to point that out here as well. Now we have one last piece of framework, and that's the connectivity. North-south connectivity has come up in a number of conversations. We want to make sure that we're covering this very briefly with you. It's a current challenge for the avenue. And so this diagram shows nearby cultural, civic, and commercial sites, as well as parks that could bring more life to the avenue. You may recall that the focus group considered how to better connect the street to these adjacent neighborhoods. And they determined that retail isn't a realistic use here, at least it's not as a contiguous feature. So instead they identified nodes or other sorts of opportunity sites to concentrate uses like food services and amenities for other people. Now each lens begins to make these connections in a slightly different way. So we do have 3 diagrams included for further consideration later, but real quick, high level, the Urban Capital emphasizes residential, commercial, and institutional connections. Here we have Civic Stage. This uses view corridors to guide connections and focuses on civic sites, entertainment destinations, and tourist attractions. And then we have Green Street that uses open space connections to link with the mall, waterfront, and other places throughout the monumental core. So that's the refresher. It's included the sections, the framework. Are there any clarification questions on this background information before we head into the lenses? It's a lot of information to go through, and even if we've discussed it in the past, I know it's been a while since we've met. Okay, hearing none, we'll get into the fun part then, and that would be the lenses. So let's shift gears a bit and walk through those 3 lenses. Now, Beth mentioned earlier, we have a bunch of information back here. So we recognize that everybody absorbs information a bit differently. We have participants with varying degrees of familiarity with the project. And we have different resources here to explain the overall character and functionality of each of the lenses. Let me make sure I have all of this in your view. Okay, so today we're going to briefly walk through two of these resources at a high level that are over here. And I'll point out the others now so you can go back before the 22nd if you'd like to review the materials. Now, as Beth mentioned earlier, we are going to share a link to the Miro board after the meeting. So for today, we're going to walk through these two pieces over here. The first is a stroll down the avenue by lens. This is, a brief overview of the lenses to identify their overarching character and role. We also have the urban rooms comparison. This allows you to see physical differences and big moves between the lenses side by side, which we think is going to be really helpful for conversation. Now, to the right of the next steps, we have the additional resources. This is the stroll down the avenue by lens. It's helpful to understand the overall character and feel of each lens from west to east. We also have the stroll comparison by room. This is another way to group the eye-level images. And then finally, we have the framework matrices, one for each lens. This has diagrams to understand the more detailed components. So we have things like land use, circulation, daily activity, and special event activity diagrammed. And those diagrams help to show how the goals are achieved for each of the lenses. So again, we're not going to speak to all of this now. I'm going to zoom in and stop intimidating everyone with all of this information. And we're really just going to focus in on a high-level overview today of each lens, and then compare them by urban room to help with your orientation today. And again, like we just did with the framework, we'll pause at the end of the overview and again at the end of the comparisons for any clarification questions. So I'm going to hand things off to Stephanie now, and she's going to walk through the first lens, Urban Capitol Street.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. So I will start us off, like Sarah said, with the Urban Capitol lens. Overall, Urban Capitol creates a third place for the district's workforce, residents, and visitors that is locally significant within a nationally recognized setting. This lens seeks to strengthen the avenue's relationship to downtown and to provide comfort amenities and services not found on the National Mall, offering alternative experiences. Visitors are attracted to the avenue for national special events and local seasonal events. In the West End, a dedicated plaza in front of the Wilson Building is a welcome mat to the District City Hall that elevates the local significance of this room. This could be a space to host mayoral events and First Amendment demonstrations. Covered workspaces integrate smart technology and comfort amenities, and a curbless condition slows cars down and brings focus to the center of the avenue. Now moving east to the Central Corridor, a series of outdoor rooms creates a variety of experiences and improves walkability east to west. A variety of room furnishings allow for a range of activities to support different types of interactions, and some rooms include commercial kiosks to activate the street. The rooms can accommodate special events and be used to extend indoor uses outside. Next, we have Market Square. A spacious plaza integrated with the steps of the National Archives is a shady meeting point with wayfinding, an educational kiosk, and fixed seating that provides respite for locals and visitors. A generous mid-block connection generates daily activity across the avenue to amenities in both plazas north and south. And further east at Constitution Avenue, this room marks a transition on the avenue to more placid and park-like green spaces. Furniture in the outdoor rooms has a more traditional park-like character, providing places for students and visitors to rest and people watch. A generous crossing allows pedestrians to move easily across the avenue between John Marshall Park and the National Mall. And a new plaza extends National Gallery of Art programming to the street, balancing activity on both sides of the avenue. At the east end, the existing parking area is reconfigured to remove some of the angled parking and include a central median for photo opportunities and stormwater management. Public art and an informational kiosk punctuate this end of the street as street trees extend the formality of the vista to the Capitol. Square 575 is the parcel opposite to the U.S. Botanic Garden on the north side of the Capitol grounds. Each lens imagines a range of potential uses for this parcel, and Urban Capital retains the expansive open lawn and pathways for people to enjoy, exploring rotational events or exhibits, and also provides wayfinding, respite, and passive recreation opportunities. Now, the lenses recognize the need to extend activity beyond 5 o'clock and into the evenings to take advantage of the avenue's beautiful setting and proximity to downtown activities. As we've seen during the pandemic, nighttime activities could also encourage more civic institutions and private businesses to extend their uses outside. For Urban Capital, a nighttime view of the central corridor on the south sidewalk illustrates the streetscape subtly illuminated to activate the outdoor rooms with lighted accents integrated with street furniture and uplighting on the street trees. And that wraps up the Urban Capital lens. So just to recap, this lens creates a social capital and a third place for local activity that is innovative and adaptive and can easily support rotating commerce to meet the changing needs of various user groups. And I'll now hand this off to Karen, who will discuss the civic stage.
Thank you, Stephanie. Civic Stage imagines the Avenue as America's civic stage, a key event destination that complements but provides a distinctly different venue experience than the National Mall. A center promenade highlights iconic views and supports a rotating showcase of arts and cultural installations. The network of public spaces provide area for a series of small intimate events or combines to transform the Avenue into a mile-long spectacle. The flexibility of its public space configuration and its seamlessly integrated infrastructure can quickly and easily accommodate different activities and respond to changing needs. We envision that as a civic stage, the Avenue can catalyze and sustain business development for area restaurants, hotels, and other city attractions and destinations. So starting at the west end, an enduring civic plaza extends across a shared street to the steps of the Wilson Building. The U.S. Capitol provides a landmark backdrop for a central stage with seating and performance space. It's a popular spot for lunches and group activities, and its openness provides a platform to showcase local causes, events, and celebrations. Here in the central corridor, an indelible promenade experience showcases framed views to the Capitol. This view illustrates the experience from the center median. Here, rotating art installations and other cultural elements focus the pedestrian experience on the promenade. Removable planters with seating protect the pedestrian path and provide an opportunity to sit and enjoy an outdoor exhibit. The view from the sidewalk shows seating and shade located towards the building wall, allowing the sidewalks to remain gracious and open so they can easily accommodate crowds and special events. An engaging civic nexus at Market Square builds on the Avenue's existing vibrancy. It's a desirable and convenient destination at the heart of the Avenue, serving visitors, workers, and residents. Here we see that generous mid-block crossing joining the median, with seating framing the promenade and in front of National Archives, helping to draw some of that activity across the Avenue. So the Constitution Avenue Tunnel creates an expansive plaza space that prioritizes pedestrian and allows for seamless connections between the public spaces on either side of the avenue. Along the north side, outdoor seating at Johns Hopkins brings activity to the street. Because anything above grade is removable, the sidewalks here can easily extend to the center promenade, creating a flexible space that can transform to accommodate a range of events and activities. And finally, the East End is where the Avenue becomes a physical connection to our government. A consistent streetscape palette extends the Avenue's character across 3rd Street through the Capitol grounds. Rotating civic art and installations in the median continue the promenade experience through to the Peace Monument. In the background, we see an educational building on parcel 575. So for the nighttime view, Civic Stage's nighttime view is from the promenade, illustrating the central corridor transformed with illuminated art and feature lighting, drawing people to the Avenue for a nighttime festival or other temporary and seasonal event. So as a quick recap, Civic Stage features a promenade and is a backdrop for diverse, engaging, and inspirational events, supported by a curated mix of seating, functional art, and landscape with integrated infrastructure that supports events, installations, and civic discourse. That wraps up Civic Stage. Next up is Garrett, who will take us on a tour of Green Street.
Thanks very much, Karen. The Green Street lens focuses on the human scale and how we interact with our environment by daylighting sustainability features that are often hidden below ground. This contributes to local sustainability goals and helps create a climate-ready DC. This is a bold linear park that prioritizes people and transit over cars, and the urban character of this linear park and the activity and events on the avenue contrast with and complement the open and park-like character, as well as the program of the National Mall. The West End is an informal green oasis where generous sidewalks and lawn are integrated with stormwater landscapes, providing and defining space for gathering, recreation, and special events. The tree canopy frames the vista of the US Capitol, drawing visitors through the park. The intimate urban spaces of the central corridor weave among street trees, seat walls, and stormwater landscapes, creating comfortable sidewalks and seating. The transitway makes a clear and sustainable statement. At Market Square, a bold pedestrian park is created by closing the avenue from 7th to 9th Streets. This new public park at the heart of the avenue creates a sustainable connection between local and national Washington. People can use this park to gather and relax with dramatic views of the US Capitol. The park here is also designed to continue to allow motorcade and emergency vehicle access. From the south sidewalk, we see how the park blends sustainable infrastructure and the active functions of an urban park, drawing pedestrians from transit, restaurants, and cultural uses north and south across the avenue. The intersection of Pennsylvania and Constitution Avenues is an opportunity to strengthen the linkages among interactive and recreational park areas, achieved by straightening Constitution Avenue's doglegs and closing 4th Street. Here, the sidewalk and cafe complement each other, providing both space and activity, giving the streetscape a park-like feel. Verdant stormwater features frame outdoor rooms and serve environmental functions. Across the avenue, we see the National Gallery's wings and the new interactive and family-focused park, providing opportunities for play and relaxation. Arriving at the east end, the focus here is on high-performance landscapes. The Green Street lens removes parking from the avenue, replacing it with a garden, which it links to a high-performance landscape to the north on Square 575. This creates a stronger gateway between the avenue and the US Capitol and showcases sustainable and resilient practices. Finally, we have a dramatic nighttime view of the Green Street, showing the new park at Market Square between 7th and 9th Streets. This park transforms at night into a recreational space to enjoy things such as a pickup game with friends in front of one of the most dramatic views in all of Washington. So to briefly recap, the Green Street transforms the avenue into an urban linear park, celebrating environmental health and wellness for all Americans, while showcasing the ecological history of the avenue and sustainability best practices. We're going to pause briefly here to see if there are any clarification questions on the lenses before we move on. Hearing none, I'm going to hand it up.
Okay?
Did I?
Wait, somebody's.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Great.
One of the concepts suggests to tunnel Constitution in that particular area. Can you elaborate on how that exactly happened and the quality of the space that will be created by the tunnel? Granted, Pennsylvania Avenue would be beautiful, kind of to be continued in this manner. But what kind of impact it will have on Constitution Avenue by tunneling it down? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, and honey, I think specifically what happens at the block-long gash that is created at the portals, right? On Constitution itself, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The ramp is what we're asking about, actually, at both ends.
Right.
We actually have an image in our next segment that probably shows this better, and it might be easier to talk to. In fact, if you just want to, we could focus in on it. Sarah, if you could, go even, get it as large as you can. So it definitely, does Karen or Sarah, do you want to start this out before I jump in?
I can give a overview quickly. it is a tunnel, so it will be underground. There's not really a way to untunnel the tunnel, but we are interested in exploring this idea because of the amount of public space connections that would allow above ground, especially between 6th Street, 4th Street, on either side of the avenue. All that becomes very seamlessly walkable. And this idea had been explored, I believe, in previous plans in the 60s and 70s. We also have imagined extending the tunnel further beyond the Capitol campus. I think the image right below that notes how that could actually create a more, like a completely secure, walkable, and cohesive Capitol campus. So it's kind of an idea that we've brought forward from past planning efforts. And while we would definitely have to consider the quality of space on Constitution Avenue, we are very interested in how this makes Pennsylvania Avenue a better place to be.
And just to add to that, the portals, start essentially just east of 7th, and then go under 6th, 5th, or 4th, and then come up on the other side of 3rd. And there are some challenges. Well, of course, the portal itself is a challenge that would have to be looked at very carefully. But even on the east end, there's some challenges because there is essentially I-395 ramps and connections under a portion of that. But we just in an initial look, it looked like it potentially, could be feasible. But it is something that we thought would be worth at least analyzing to determine what kind of impacts it would have, because it does create some pretty grand public spaces for civic stage. And this is where many of the big civic events are actually held on this end of the avenue.
Well, thank you. Are we supposed to follow up with comments, or should we?
Well, no, we're actually going to do that. We'd like to have the discussion on the 22nd.
Okay, yeah.
So what we today is really just trying to get you orientation, orient you to the material. Because we could dive in and discuss many things.
Yeah, I think we should make notes today and send you our comments.
That would be terrific. Yeah, and even any additional questions you want to talk about, in a couple of weeks. So
thank you, Hani. Are there any other just brief clarification questions before we move forward?
I hate to be the one who's just kind of generating.
No, we need to clarify. This is the time to do it.
Yeah, well, I also heard some of the comments about clearing the avenue by removing planters with trees. Can you explain that a little more? I mean, what is the significance of those trees and how those planters will be moved to clear the cartway for inaugural events and so on?
Thank you, Hani. I think that also refers to Karen's lens, so I'll hand that to Karen.
Yeah. So the inaugural event requires an 80-foot clear space, and many other special events do take advantage of the entire avenue, cartway, roadway. So the advantage of having these planters, it provides a somewhat temporary area to sit, some additional landscaping, visual interest, but in the need of an event, we could remove them. Probably would take some planning. They would probably not be something that moves in and out every weekend, but the inaugural being every 4 years and other significant large-scale events could work around this and have this this element that protects the pedestrians, frames the promenade there for most of the time, but we do understand the larger event needs and requirements for things to be removable.
And this is just to follow up with that, there are certain types of planters that can be put in that, you can come in with a small little lift and pick them up and move them, out of the to a different location. Again, very logistically, could be complex, but definitely something that could be done in the event that we needed to do that, particularly every 4 years. The other idea that we briefly discussed was potentially looking at, even if we were to plant these trees in the ground, plant them at a larger size and just plan on pulling them out every 4 years. A tree that might be worth having 4 years of a delightful space to be and to enjoy, and then they could be relocated or actually removed and replaced with a new tree come down the pike. The other thing we might want to do here, this might be a good time to look at, maybe if you could go back to the alternative section that we did for the avenue. This again has, right off the bat, there's definitely pros and cons, but this is one that you could actually perhaps even design it where you would not have to take those elements out for those larger events or the inaugural. But it does move the streets closer to the buildings and, centers really the pedestrian space, on axis with the Capitol.
Great, right, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Hani. Any other, as I said before, brief clarification questions before we move forward? Hearing no additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Karen to discuss a comparison of the urban rooms.
Thanks, Garrett. So we just got a sense of the character and feel of the lenses, and we'll now summarize the existing conditions. We'll review what works well, what doesn't work, and what we want to achieve. We'll then go through a comparison of the lenses that focus on the physical changes, briefly touching on the main features or big moves in each room. So we'll start at the West End, which is generally the area between 15th and 13th Streets. The West End benefits from proximity to visitor destinations, hospitality and entertainment venues, civic buildings, and a series of urban parks that create a gateway to the avenue. The wide cartway and open Freedom Plaza space can support special events and large groups. However, the space lacks the human scale and comfort elements that sustain consistent daily activity. Each lens aims to address the avenue's alignment and circulation here in a different way. And improvements aim to enhance the iconic vista, scale down the public spaces, and integrate elements that support a range of uses. So for the comparison, we will go in order, starting with Urban Capitol, where the big move in this room is reestablishing the avenue's historic alignment with a curbless roadway, creating a bow tie configuration with two plazas physically engaging the adjacent blocks. The plazas are flexible public spaces with a balance of hardscape and green space. To the south, a shared street for pickup and drop-off serves the adjacent buildings and public spaces. In Civic Stage, the big move is rerouting traffic north of Freedom Plaza and Pershing Park, connecting the public spaces with the blocks to the south. This circulation change creates a gracious plaza and assembly space in front of the Wilson Building and a more prominent entry for the White House Visitor Center. A shared street provides pickup and drop-off for these uses. In Green Street, the big move is dedicating the street to transit and rerouting the avenue south of Freedom Plaza and Pershing Park, sort of the opposite of what we just saw, connecting the public spaces with the blocks to the north. This creates a park in front of the National Theater and provides space for pedestrian movement, recreation, and events. To the north, a shared street for pickup and drop-off serves the adjacent buildings and public spaces. So we'll move a little bit further east to the Central Corridor area, which is generally the area between 13th and 9th Streets. This part of the avenue has a relatively consistent building wall on either side, with commercial buildings framing the north side and Federal Triangle agencies to the south. The Central Corridor's main feature is a beautifully framed view to the Capitol. While that view contributes to a strong character, the long blocks here lack engaging ground floors and the sidewalks seem oversized for daily use. Each lens focuses on improvements that aim to enhance the avenue's character and engage pedestrians. Starting with Urban Capitol again, the main feature of this lens is a build-to-line adjustment on the north side of the street that creates space for new active ground floor uses and retains a street tree canopy framing the Capitol vista. Outdoor rooms articulate an engaging pedestrian experience along the avenue. Civic Stage, the main feature is that center promenade running the length of the avenue, which offers a unique way to safely experience the Capitol Vista. Pedestrian circulation is focused in the median and closer to the curb to allow for crowds and event overflow. Green Street, the main feature is a series of sidewalk paths weaving through the linear park landscape, creating areas for seating and recreation. Wider setbacks on the north side provide areas for additional program space. So now I'll head over to the avenue's midpoint, which is Market Square, and generally the area between 9th and 7th Streets. Here, the Navy Memorial anchors the intersection of Indiana and Pennsylvania Avenues and 8th Street, featuring reciprocal views along the 8th Street axis. To the north, multiple transit connections and a diverse land use mix make this one of the avenue's most vibrant locations. However, the south side doesn't sustain the same level of activity, and despite the concentration of apartment buildings in the area, it lacks any kind of amenities for neighborhood residents and children. Each lens incorporates improvements that aim to draw activity across the avenue and support a range of users. Starting with Urban Capitol, the main feature here is a generous mid-block pedestrian crossing that extends Market Square across the avenue, engaging the National Archives. An expanded and activated plaza at Archives emphasizes its connection to the avenue and with active uses at Market Square, framing reciprocal views along the 8th Street axis. At Civic Stage, the main feature is where the center median promenade joins a generous mid-block pedestrian crossing, enhancing the connection between Market Square and Archives. On the north, the plaza remains open, and to the south, an elevated viewing platform frames important axial views and provides a clear visual orientation to surrounding destinations. And at Green Street, the main feature is an active urban park at the heart of the avenue, created by closing the avenue completely between 9th and 7th Streets, except for emergency vehicle and motorcade access. The park connects the Navy Memorial to Archives and provides an expansive space for recreation with direct views to the U.S. Capitol. So in this final section, we'll cover 2 rooms that stretch between 7th and 1st Streets. Here, the avenue's wide setbacks and multiple open spaces feature some of the best views of the Capitol and provide plenty of space for events. This area benefits from proximity to educational, institutional, and cultural destinations, and the National Mall and Smithsonian museums are a short walk away. However, the scale here can be overwhelming. The building frontages don't engage the street, and a lack of programming can make it hard to sustain activity after working hours. East of 3rd Street, the avenue's pavement changes and the roadway terminates into a parking lot, disrupting the unified streetscape and pedestrian continuity that is a signature feature of the avenue. Improvements here aim to make the avenue experience more cohesive and enhance the public space with amenities and infrastructure that support all scales of programming and events. So we'll start near the intersection of Constitution and 4th Street. That's the area that we just looked at with the tunnel. We'll focus on Urban Capitol, where here the big move is adding a generous pedestrian crossing at 4th Street, enhancing the area's walkability while retaining that existing Constitution Avenue alignment. John Marshall Park, Mellon Fountain, and programmable open spaces in front of the National Gallery of Art draw tourists from the National Mall and nearby neighborhoods. Civic Stage, we talked about the big move here, which is the Constitution Avenue Tunnel. We're also closing portions of 6th and 4th Streets to traffic. This creates a cohesive and open sequence of public spaces that allows for seamless connections along the avenue and provides ample space for outdoor programming and events. Avenue closures can further expand the plaza space to support additional assembly and staging area for a range of event sizes. In Green Street, the big move is straightening Constitution Avenue's dogleg. This realignment combines with a 4th Street closure, creating a more intuitive pedestrian connection between a recreation-focused John Marshall Park and an active programmable park space between the National Gallery of Art's east and west wings. And finally, down at the east end, Urban Capitol, the big move here is removing the angled parking from the center of the street and replacing it with a landscape median, making this segment of the avenue a place for both people and cars. Street trees frame the avenue and adjacent open spaces, creating a walkable connection to Square 575, a new destination for residents, visitors, and workers. In Civic Stage, the big move is replacing all the angled parking with curbside parallel parking, which gives some room to extend the center promenade to the Peace Monument. The median and wide sidewalks provide generous pedestrian space, and the avenue closures here can further expand the area for large events. Civic Stage shows that educational building on Square 575, and we did note about the tunnel. It could extend further east to kind of create a cohesive, walkable, and secure Capitol campus. And finally, in Green Street, the big move is removing all parking from the avenue and creating a garden, a grand reciprocal gateway, welcoming people to the U.S. Capitol and to the avenue. The garden is linked to a high-performance landscape and interpretive center on Square 575. So that wraps up the comparison. We hope this presentation has illuminated the three lenses, and we welcome any clarification questions, and for that, we'll hand it over to Otto.
So does anyone have anything they would like for us to cover again, or to further describe that might be helpful?
Peter has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to put out a word of caution about the extension of the tunnel up under the Capitol grounds. Parallel to and immediately east of Delaware Avenue, there is a vehicular tunnel that crosses under Constitution Avenue. So kind of right where that arrow, I'm not Delaware. What's the other one?
Louisiana?
Louisiana.
Maryland?
Sorry, Louisiana.
Also, Peter, you know, the interstate goes under the reflecting basin there.
You're absolutely right. That's
and
true.
So there's I think you might bang your head on the end of that ramp, or one way or the other.
Yeah, I forgot about that. The reflecting pool follows the path of the tunnel.
Yeah, so I think it's problematic, and one could look at it. There might be some wiggles. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, when we were, tasked with sort of looking at this, we did, as architects, landscape architects, did some, I'll say, looking for fatal flaws for the engineering and sort of the slopes. And, we even, to Haney's point about, in other cities, you may not talk about tunnels, but in DC with, thinking about Connecticut Avenue at DuPont or Mass Ave, there is some precedence. And although it's usually the State Street and not like Constitution, but I do think there's definitely some, it would have to go to the next level of engineering to, really understand where needed the daylight in terms of 395 and if it would work east of 395, if that helped with the Capitol. And I do think, and Elizabeth, correct me, but the AOC, didn't they actually reference?
I think it's been referenced in past studies.
Otto, another thing to check carefully is if you can follow the roadway design standards from the National Park Service rather than the Federal Highway Administration, you'll be able to get a far better design. The DuPont Circle.
It is so true.
The DuPont Circle configuration is completely illegal under any normal national highway standard. But if you can use the Park Service Parkway rules, you can get a safer and far more elegant design.
I will concede that we were looking at it and we were kind of using the precedent example of slopes for Mass Ave and Connecticut Avenue to really compress the extent of the gash. Again, that is great advice. And right now these are still concept sketches, and we recognized during even the working group there was a lot of debate about, is this a good idea or not? And so, we were really just tasked to help collaborate with the NCPC staff to, put it, to sort of conceptualize it for the executive committee and the focus group to really see what it might look like.
And if 395 is in the way, look at the Meade Memorial space. If you might be able to temporarily remove the Meade Memorial and potentially elevate Pennsylvania Avenue a bit in order to get the right clearance to get Constitution under.
When I think on the Green Street where we brought Constitution Avenue, we would have to relocate the Meade Memorial. So that's a whole nother, SHPO issue that would come up. So there's definitely a lot of future agency coordinations for all these sketch ideas right now.
Yeah, I realize that this is all at a concept level. I just wanted to compliment the group for the amazing effort that you've done going through all these lenses and the consistency of the presentation and the clarity of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
And, this is Chris Brown from the Architect of the Capitol.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Elizabeth. I just wanted to give some context on the tunneling of Constitution Avenue. It is in our 2011 master plan as an option to be explored. So it has continued over the years to kind of be discussed as a potential option, often, looking at the security aspect of how it would affect the Capitol campus, as well as how it may or may not improve accessibility, all ranges from pedestrians and micromobility to vehicles. So it is something that we do continue to have on the table.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else have any questions or good suggestions about the MPS highway standard or tunnel standards, roadway standards? If not, I don't. So we could. Why don't we briefly talk about our next meeting, and then we'll be close to wrapping up.
Elizabeth, could I just ask a question?
Sure. Hi, Helen.
Sorry to be so distant and so invisible. It's actually that, am I right in thinking that this meeting is being recorded and can be made available to people, particularly, for instance, me, who I can't see any of the beautiful things that you've done, and obviously I'd really like to in advance of the 22nd. So I'm assuming that this recording will be made available to us all.
We can. We just ask that you don't share it with anybody.
Yeah, of course.
So
I don't know who I would share it with. But
just my disclaimer.
Yeah. If I could get a copy or just get a link to the recording, that would be really super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be able, and you will also be sending the our panel a PDF of these materials so that you can study them and mark them up, and because we knew that some of you might want to get your pencils out and scratch.
Thank you.
Okay.
I've been sitting here with my eyes closed, trying to imagine the avenue as you talk about it.
This might be a litmus test.
Quite an interesting exercise. Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay.
Sure. So yes, materials will certainly be available to everyone. We will send a link out to this Miro board this afternoon for everyone's review. If you would like a PDF, we'll send it out to our panelists. For others, just, I guess, let us know if you need that. But otherwise, this is all the same information that's on the Miro board. So we have drafted an agenda for June 22nd. You can see here, and we'll also attach that to the meeting invite. This also includes.
Enlarge that up just a bit.
Sure.
I'm on a tiny computer. Thank you.
How's that? Okay.
Good. Perfect.
Excellent. Now, we do have some potential discussion questions to help frame that conversation on the 22nd. They're included right here. And right now, again, these are brainstorms. So if you have other things that you would like to focus on, please let us know. Just to start out, though, we'd like to know what the strongest attributes are of each lens and if they should be made more prominent. There may be some features that could further distinguish the lenses from each other that could be helpful we could discuss. We'd love to know if there are any missed opportunities along the avenue you may know of to capitalize on, and any refinements that are needed from your agency's viewpoint to support the range of lenses before these go out for public discussion. So if you have anything that would help advance and finalize these lenses, we look forward to speaking about that and discussing it on the 22nd. So please reach out if you have anything in particular that you'd like to cover. And then last but not least, we have to plug our upcoming event with the panelists. On June 29th at noon Eastern Time, we will host an online discussion with the expert panel, and Kathleen McGuigan, the chief editor at Architectural Record, will moderate the discussion. So the panel will share their big ideas from the 2018 charrette to lay the foundation for the vision's concepts that will be released for public review later this year. So please visit NCPC's website for more information and to register. Now, I know we've covered a lot of information today. The team is happy to follow up with any of you for an additional briefing or discussion prior to June 22nd. Again, we will also send a link out to this Miro board, and feel free to mark it up and use it to kind of frame the future discussion on the 22nd. So just one kind of, yeah, go ahead, Beth, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to see if there were any final questions related to the content that we shared today or our next steps as we move forward.
Well, I just wanted to add and to emphasize that, if you have the time and you want to reach out, we don't want to necessarily get into a discussion with you all individually, because that's what we are looking forward to having you all discuss together. But if you need more explanation or just to explain anything that you might see on the Miro board, please do not hesitate to reach out to either Sarah or I, and we'll definitely set that up. And I also just wanted to mention that, these are vision ideas, these are concepts. We realize that they're bold. Some things may be very feasible and doable. Others are big moves that might take a bigger lift, but at the end of the day, they might be worth it, or they may not. So, when we do go public with this, there's a big disclaimer to that. We don't want this to look like a proposed design, but it's just to get people inspired about what could be, and to spur a discussion about what might be desirable and what might not. And this is at the very, very beginning of that process. So with that, unless anyone has anything else, it's about time to wrap. We've got.
Beth, this is Mina. I would just like to ask that the focus group people comment on the drawings, because I still find them to be too much. They start to look very similar to each other. Maybe there's, I don't know, or maybe it's because I've been looking at them for too long. They just feel really still. We talked about simplifying them, and they get the point across that with plantings and landscape, but I think at some juncture it feels to me like it's still too much and kind of is doesn't do us any favors. So I would ask that people comment on that, because I'm still finding him a struggle.
Mina, this is Lori. I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I thought it was interesting how in the aerial perspectives they looked much more clear and different, and the size of all the small identical eye-level drawings, they tend to all blur together and look very similar, partly because of the nature of the cartoonish drawings, but the spaces all look to be the same size and about the same amount of pink to green to beige, etc. So I think you're right. There is a graphic problem at the moment that is belying the differences spatially and conceptually of the project, which was something I was going to write, but I may as well just say it out loud. Stepping on somebody's toes, I know, but for instance, in the one that's supposed to be the urban stage, there's no wow. I mean, they all look like the same little intimate spaces. It doesn't. I don't see the big crowds and the great events and the spectacle. So whereas, but in the aerial perspectives, there was much more clarification, partly because they were simpler and you're further away, I think, but the generalization was much more clear. So that's just to whoever is doing all the renderings right now, be advised that you're going to get beat up.
Yeah, I agree with Lori. I think the bird's eye view that you see in these images really is very clear in terms of differentiation between one scheme and the other. But when you get to the ground level,
they're more homogeneous on the ground level, Hanny, in this point.
You almost cannot distinguish much between one and the other. There is no distinctive strong features. to clarify. I mean, to distinguish between.
Whereas it's clear there would be, so
Right.
it's not coming out. So even though I think conceptually they're strong, and I think
Yeah.
what's where makes sense, I think it's not showing in the sketches yet.
And it may be simply a matter of a palette tweak,
Yeah.
you know, where you're, I think the drawings are lovely. It's just that thank you. Lori.
We'll just stop there and let the people who have to draw them struggle with
Let
it.
them fix it.
Okay. Actually,
We're not supposed to tell them how to do it, right? Isn't it? Juries usually, you're supposed to tell people what the problem is, not how to solve it. Right?
Now, this is all great, excellent feedback. I do want to I'm curious since, part of to me, the differentiation is like on the aerials, you see the three schemes together. And I was hoping if Sarah could kind of scroll to the right, which shows the eye level where you see the lens comparison. Because I do agree that when part of it was you were trying to make the lenses read similarly. No, keep going right, further right. I mean, that helped. Those images were to sort of link the eye level to the aerial. And then
it's just not working for you yet, I tell you.
Okay.
Can you go, Sarah, can you go to Central Corridor? Market Square is one of the hardest spaces because it's just a very large. So,
but it doesn't look large. They all look like petite domestic, it's almost suburban scale spaces in these sketches, They don't look to me grand or urban.
If I could weigh in here too, I mean, we talked about this earlier, and I actually think it's better, but I agree that maybe there's a little bit of a tweak of palette that you could help to differentiate. The other is, I feel like those aerial vignettes are more could convey more of the conceptual and spatial content at a glance.
For the level we're at,
I'd rather
Tom,
see
yeah,
them
right.
first, not necessarily the very first, but before these ground level vignettes. Once you sort of understand, like it's very clear.
Yeah.
Like when you see those aerial rooms, like what's going on, you get like this continuous park space. You get the more, the civic framework. You understand it pretty well, and then you could probably your mind can leap into the vignette a little bit better.
yeah, pan over to those. I get off this one, yeah. So okay.
I don't know how much you can tweak the presentation. But I feel like starting here is maybe you're not giving the people the viewer a chance to really absorb the conceptual differentiation.
Yeah, we flipped our goal, so.
Yeah, I know it's hard.
Yeah, wondering if the issue is you're trying to be consistent for a comparison.
Actually, Haney, just before you start, I think this is a great conversation, but I just want to, there's probably a lot of people on the call that this might be way more information than they need.
Right.
So I would just say for any of those that joined us with the guest, don't hesitate to drop off. We look forward to talking with you in a couple of weeks. But I am very interested in hearing what you all have to say. So continue on. I'm sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge that.
I think the issue may be that you're trying to be fair to each lens or each option. So you tend to compare them side by side in the same exact view, but perhaps each scheme needs to be presented in a way to highlight its attributes.
Yeah.
It may be, the angle may be different, or maybe it needs to be presented in a different way, with the exception of the bird's eye view. Like the bird's eye view is very consistent and it just clarifies. And then you begin to kind of focus more on each scheme and show it in a way that highlights the beauty of that particular scheme, as opposed to being rigid in terms of one-to-one exactly the same angle. Maybe that is the answer.
Actually, Haney, you're bringing up an excellent point, because that's part of what we struggled with. We were trying to be fair and show from the same location. And we actually started, as we were going along, we then started to say, well, this is not conveying what we want it to say. So we actually came up with different locations. We had one sketch for each lens from a location that sort of highlighted its main feature. Or
But the part of the problem you're having is the problem that all designers know about, and that is the level of detail for the state of the concept. The minute you show a bench, everybody looks at it and starts looking at it. Is it a real bench? Does it look right? And blah, 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 blah. And they're saying, well, that's not as nice a bench as I would have drawn them, etc. So what happens is people go down these rabbit holes that are based upon details that you didn't really want to show, but you had to show something. And so you've got this problem between the generalization and the specific that is trapping the people who are trying to draw it as to what to show. And they're trying to say, well, the street would have some texture. And so the minute they start showing lines on the street that are the texture of the materials, people immediately start worrying about why it's that way and not some other way. And is it too heavy for the drawing and blah, blah. And we just go down these rabbit holes that are terrible for all of us. And it's a problem that people have with visual material. Anyway.
The miss trying to get the ideas.
I know. So I sympathize with what's going on, but I think we have to find a way to take stuff out of some of those sketches or change their point of view.
Okay.
Anyway, that's enough for me for now. It's a lot for the people who are going to have to deal with it, some of whom are listening and they're sort of quietly, biting their tongue and not wanting to get defensive, get cross with me, but it's okay.
Yeah, but I think in the end, the graphic content is probably all that some people will even.
Yeah, they won't read anything. Right?
Yeah, they won't read it, so it's really important to get it right. And they're lovely drawings. It's just that it feels, yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe we
stop beating it. Yeah.
Maybe we just have 3 spots for each lens. And that's all we show. We take the 3 best locations.
I think you're trying to show stuff you haven't figured out, and that's always a problem.
There's that balance about trying to convey an idea or a character, and it's much easier to do at the bird's eye scale.
Yeah.
Because you're not focused on detail. You're just focused on the allocation of space. So
anyway, well. Press on, try some more stuff. We'll send you some comments and try and be helpful.
Well, if you have any examples of something that you've seen, please send that along too.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate everybody's time. We look forward to continuing the dialogue. And I'm not sure that we'll talk, but we might need to rethink the 22nd if we need to do a lot of redrawing, but Elizabeth,
a lot of what you showed was fine, and we got the drift. There's just that we're picking on one particular chunk of stuff. That's all.
Yeah.
And it may not be a redo, Beth. It may be heavy editing.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's what I was going to offer. Somebody suggested, I think what I heard was maybe instead of having 6 consistent images for every option, maybe you just pick the best of 3. You don't have to have everything for everybody. And that just means fewer, and then your mind can actually absorb 3 key images much better than 6.
What's the big idea? Right. Yeah. Exactly, Tom. Right. Okay.
Okay. That sounds like I think an approach that it could be more doable.
Yeah, I think it's really tweaking, not.
Yeah. Okay.
Stay the course.
Gotta go.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Could I ask the team to, maybe we'll send out an invite. I'd like to do a quick debrief. If we have time. Otto, do you have time?
Yeah, I'd like to sit in on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do it.
Okay. I'll send an invite. I'm going to take it off this call. Okay.
Sounds good.